Hi. Today I'm going to share with you my grandfather's memory of Normandy Beach. Um, he wrote it back in October 5th, 1992, and this is what he remembered from his experience there. It says, "My memory of D-Day, 1944. I was a pharmacist mate, third class aboard the USS Fitch 462. A Bristol-class destroyer commissioned, I believe, in February 1942. A beautiful ship with 4 or 5-inch guns as her major arraignment. I was a Navy reservist that had left high school to enlist in the United States Navy to do what I could to help end the war around the time of Pearl Harbor or soon after there at war. After early training and time spent on the Jovis T. Dickman, a troop transport through North Africa and Sicily, then Salerno, I found myself transferred to this ship and as happy as I could be to serve on an actual combat vessel. I was amazed at her speed and maneuverability after the transport. I felt like I had finally found the place I was supposed to be. Early June found us in England and English waters, and of course all the scuttlebutt was about the big push across the channel. We were finally told what was happening. Liberty was stopped, and we just watched the collection of boats, personnel, etc. It was incredible. Late on the night of June 5th, we got underway with several boats in our division. I think we were told that we were to observe enemy gun emplacements on the French coast. We should get as much rest as possible before general quarters. I think we all knew that was it. We would do more than observe gun placements. Needless to say, there was very little sleep that night by anyone. Soon overheard was a steady drone of aircraft, and we knew that we were right in our conclusions. Most of the crew, I recall by the time, were up and doing the things people do before an engagement. Some wrote letters, some prayed, and some, like myself, kept going outside and looking in the direction we were going to see the first signs of activity. It didn't take long. At first there was a glow in the sky that swelled and receded over and over as we got closer and finally could see land. The light was all fires and explosion from the bombing and shell fire. Tracers flying everywhere. From a distance I can remember thinking how beautiful it all was, like a gigantic 4th of July or something. The thought didn't last long, however, when it became a burning plane or ship on fire as visibility improved. Our initial function turned out to be observing gun emplacements, all right, but also to shell them and put them out of commission. I think that we were the lead ship to approach the Utah beach. It looked like we were going right up on the beach. I did not know how close we were, but it was close. We laid smoke, shell positions with our 5-inch guns, and fortunately dodged all any enemy fire directed at us. We all seemed scared, but somehow functioned very well. Behind us came our sister ship, the USS Corey. There was a terrible explosion at her bow. I don't know if she hit a mine or took a shell, but she began going down immediately, firing and laying smoke as long as she could. At the end of our run, the skipper asked for someone to volunteer to take the whaleboat and get survivors. There were many volunteers. A young coxswain called Frog and myself were the lucky ones chosen. While the whaleboat was prepared for launching, the captain turned our ship and headed back in the direction on the beach as close as he could to launch the whaleboat for us. We took blankets, first aid equipment, and lines with us and started in under fire. The beach was leveling at the Corey and the Fitch. For some reason, the stern of the ship stayed up a while. The screw was out of the water, and there was a man clinging to the top blade of the prop. Not much farther was a greater number of survivors clinging to debris or rafts that had floated off the ship. I told Frog to go to the larger group, and we pick up the single man on the way back. After loading as many men as we could without swamping the boat and towing some of the raft with lines, we headed back towards the ship to unload and return. The man on propeller was gone. I found out later that he tried to swim on his own when I did not pick him up, but he could not get to the ship because of the tide and the wind. One of our other crew members went over the side with the line around his waist and got the man before he was too far to get to. I don't recall how many trips we made. I remember the waves and the pitching of the boat, the shells that just missed us, and the shrapnel that occasionally fell on us from anti-personnel shells. They would explode overhead and rain shrapnel all over the place. It was nothing short of a miracle that none of us were harmed by them. Finally, there was no more people visible, and we had to return to the ship. When I got aboard, there were seamen laying everywhere, many hurt, many just cold and shivering, and all needed attention. We immediately left the area and went to the larger ship. I have documents that state that we had 223 survivors aboard at that time. I never really got to count them, but we're very glad to get out of there and also very glad to be able to help these people. I have no way knowing how much time was used for this activity, but I also remember hearing that at the end of the first day, we'd expected 80% of our arraignment against the shore installations and all the air attacks that came that day. I also seem to recall that was my first look at our P-38s, and I was real glad they were ours. When the Germans overhead are on their way, if any of our P-38s were near, they turned tail and ran. I can remember the scream of the Stuka dry bombers coming straight down at you, a horrible noise. I believe we went 30 or 36 hours without a cooked meal or sleep to speak of. The third day we were back in England to replace our expended supplies and some much needed sleep and new orders for the rest of the stay at Normandy. That's it. I'm sorry, it gets me a little choked up every time I read it, but I figured that was a great story to share with people about our American history.